All right, welcome back, everyone. Welcome to James Bond Bitcoin Live 0072 hashtag love. And in the notes section here, I have a few things. Today, Brian is not here, unfortunately, but it's because he wanted to take a little rest, which he deserves, because I know he was busy over the weekend. I, but I do have Hiroja, Shibe, Space Odyssey Network here again, and we'll be talking back and forth here. I have her link to her channel. I have links to her other channel, her vlogs, her podcasts, her Twitter, her website. And so that's in the notes section. Some of the things we'll talk about, we'll touch on these subjects here is Greek court approved the extradition of Vinnik to Russia. That was the first news story that really came out, and then the following stories came out. I think either Cointelegraph, they each had a news story come out with a different position. So BTC-e's Vinnik will go to Russia, not U.S. Greek court rules. That's one of, I think that was CryptoCoin's news. And then another news came out today. Alleged Bitcoin launderer BTC-e admin's legal future thrown into turmoil. And so that's all in the notes section. We'll talk about that. Another thing in the notes section is From Russia with Love by Matt MONRO, James Bond 007. Just something tie into the meme today. And so, of course, I have the new time lock address, the meme, the pot of gold, the address to the pot of gold for anyone who wants to donate to it. So anyways, Hiroja, say hi and hello to the audience.
Hello, everyone. Do you have your
All right.
on? Get ready for the good old Russian burr.
The Russian burr.
The winter. They like to
the
drink
winter,
their
yes, the cold winter coming.
Yes, a very cold winter.
So let's go into the meme here. It's From Russia with Love. Hashtag yes2x, and of course that's everyone complains about me not wearing a suit. Well, here you go. I'm in a suit for all you guys, and so there you have it. So let's talk about Alexander Vinnik. Have you been following that story, Hiroja?
Oh, I've been following it for a while. I did like a whole series of episodes about the collapse after the collapse of Silk Road Marketplace, how different things change, like how exchanges change the way they did their business, how Tor is in the process of rebuilding itself to where it has stronger privacy and try to limit the attack vectors that government has done to go after the different sites and marketplaces, I guess you can say, or people that use Tor, about the nature of how people interact and engage with Bitcoin cryptocurrencies. And one of the biggest mysteries was all about like the theft of both Mt. Gox and where exactly all the Silk Road Marketplace coins went, because the initial report stated that there was like 400,000 Bitcoins that they seized, but they only sold like 150K. And there's like a lot of players and shady players, and people are wondering where those coins went and where those Mt. Gox coins went. And we got that answer with BTC-e and this character, Alexander Vinnik, this Russian, who was basically laundering those coins and was, I guess, almost an open secret among the darknet marketplaces, or if you were a thief, to launder your coins through that place. And now I guess he's going to Russia instead of going to the US and being extradited. And it'd be interesting to see how that really fully plays out, because he has like a 21 count indictment here in the States. And they normally don't like people being let go like that, you know, the FBI and the Justice Department. So,
Well, don't worry. If you actually read the whole story, the original story, and this is kind of interesting. The two news articles that came out, one saying that he will be extradited to Russia, and the other one kind of ambiguous. The title doesn't really say anything, but if you read the articles on the second one, it actually says that he's accepted to go to Russia, to be extradited to Russia, but it doesn't mean he will go to Russia.
No, I think
So the original story.
Go ahead.
Well, the original story, the story which I think both articles sourced their information from, which was let me see here, which was the Greek court approved the extradition of Vinnik to Russia. Let me see, the main thing for October 11th. That came out October 11th, and so I think the crypto coins news came out October 11th. But if it says in there that just because the court ruled that he could be extradited to Russia doesn't mean he'll go to Russia, because the U.S. wants him as well. And so it's really up to, I think, the prosecutor or some other person
an appeal
who's he's going to decide which.
Yeah.
Well, it was going to the Supreme Court, but it doesn't matter what the Supreme Court says, because apparently there's a guy who's going to make that decision regardless of what the courts say of how he's going to be extradited. Yeah. And so I guess he could fight all he wants, but it may be up to the decision of one person deciding which country Vinnik is going to be extradited.
And it would have come down to is, I know during the Cold War era, Greece played both sides, both the U.S. and the Russians. And so we'll see like who actually has real influence in Greece, because Greece doesn't like both countries right now. I mean, it's in the kind of doldrums and fighting the European Union and its economic situation, and it's gotten beaten around a little bit in the economy. So it really is about who can make the best deal and who can do the most for them, the Russians or the U.S. And I think that's really is going to fundamentally determine where Alexander Vinnik is going to go. I do think maybe the Russians might fight this issue for the simple fact that Russia is fighting the U.S. on everything right now, with criminal cases, with businesses and stuff like that. Like, as much as U.S. news puts, the Trump administration very much in favor of Russia or whatever, there's still a lot of behind-the-scenes fighting that goes on with the State Department and businesses and judicial stuff. That'll be interesting to see how this case plays out, and it really will tell like what exactly the nature of the U.S. and Russian relationship truly is.
Yeah, I found that interesting as well, because it seems like the Cold War is getting hot again, so to speak. Ever since Trump got into office, and somehow the Russians were responsible of him being elected and all that stuff, it seems kind of weird. And some of the other problems or conflicts that's been happening in Europe or Eastern Europe, in particular the Ukraine and the annex of Crimea. Greek seems like they're playing. I don't know if they're playing both sides, but I do think there's a battle for Vinnik, and I thought that was interesting, because when I first started following that story, it was kind of strange how Vinnik reach out to Russia, obviously through his attorney, but through the Russian media as well. And it seems like it has reached the right person to go out and try to retrieve Vinnik. Now, what I'm wondering is why. I understand Vinnik is a Russian citizen, and he's definitely making a plea to his country to retrieve him from the clutches of America. But, is there more to it than meets the eye? Why would Russia be so interested in Vinnik? I mean, do you think is it really because he has that skill, or he has some knowledge, or he may know some people who may be involved in his money laundering business, his exchange, that might implicate maybe some other Russians?
I do think it's all those things. Like, one, he does obviously has a skill set. He would have been able to do what he has been doing for as long as he's done it. And that could be very valuable. Two, if you look at the BTC-e and all the different, from the WigSec report, all the different hacks that are attributed to it, and the fact that it was a go-to darknet marketplace to launder your funds, a lot of these are there state-sponsored, state-sanctioned, or hacking groups that have Russian affiliation. Some of them come out of Ukraine, different satellite states that have heavy Russian influences utilize that place. So I do think he has connections, secondary or third or by third party to the Russian state by working with these different groups and laundering their funds. He may even actually know actual Russian state actors or handlers negotiating or doing things for them as far as laundering these bitcoins and other cryptocurrencies. So he does possess knowledge. He has an understanding of the underworld, if you will. Particularly, I think a lot of these Russian hacking groups that have gone on and done things, in Ukraine, Spain, Europe, those type of stuff, and possibly, I'm not saying ties to the U.S. election things, but there's some other stuff that a lot of Russian hacker groups have done. That's just part of state warfare, if you will, and he may have a key knowledge or be a key component to that, and so he's pleading to these guys, say, I've done all these things for you, come get me.
It does seem like that, doesn't it? I mean, I was actually very surprised that the Russians would make such an effort to try to go get him, even to go to court to retrieve him.
Oh,
but what do you think the odds are on that? I mean, because he's very key to probably the Mt. Gox collapse. He may be key to some Silk Road and other drug-related darknet market sites, as well as most likely all the ransomware that's been going on all over the world.
The ransomware went through that BTC-e. So, yeah.
I'm sorry?
I think it was at least that 80% of the ransomware, the payments, all that stuff, went through BTC.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, and those were actually targeted to Europe, America, UK. So there were very definitely targeted to, I would say, everywhere except Russia for the most part. So they're extracting wealth from all over the country, BTC-e. And so, they're definitely, the U.S. definitely has an interest in getting him. And not only that, maybe even extracting a little bit more information.
Yes, but the biggest question is whether or not the U.S. actually has jurisdiction over him. Because they don't have, my understanding, they don't have a financial agreement per se with the Russian government. And he's a Russian citizen. It's a Russian-based company. He just happened to vacation in Greece, and he's not the first Russian that's been picked up for hacking and financial crimes. And Russia's getting a little upset by it because they're having a lot of their key go-to Russian guys getting picked up whenever they go outside of Russia, which is very disconcerting if you're a Russian citizen, where if you travel anywhere, you can be snatched up by the U.S. government. That's not good. Even if it's for legitimate reasons, that's just not how it should be done. And I don't understand why the State Department or the Department of Justice is not working much strongly with the Russians when it comes to catching these type of criminals. And maybe it's because the Russians want something more from the U.S. and the U.S. is not willing to give it up. But it's ugly and it's bad, and it's not very good judiciary practice, if you will.
That's a good point. I would suspect that the reason why they're not working with the Russians is most likely they may not be on good relations, and second is that may tip their hat to the perpetrators. Because you don't know you never know what's really going on, and that tips the hat to the perpetrator, in which they can just never be caught, never be apprehended. So on the screen here, I have the article from, I believe that's Crypto Coins News. Okay, so this is coming from Crypto Coins News. This is actually, and this is the most recent rewrite of the article from the original source here. And so in this one, it does talk about how you know, they would go to court, and the request to extradite Vinnik to Russia was accepted. But at the same time, U.S. is doing the same thing, and I think that's been accepted as well. It's just that Vinnik is refusing the U.S., but he's accepting to be extradited to Russia. Now, of course, if I was Vinnik, and if I had maybe ties to, you know, being handled by the Russian government, I would be, you know, wanting to be extradited to Russia as well, and knowing that he probably won't be arrested. And let me see, what are the charges here? It says he's being accused of obtaining 667,000 rubles, which is only $500 through fraudulent means, and that's how Russia is trying to extradite. That's his crime in Russia, versus where the U.S. has 21 counts, all right, of $4 billion worth of Bitcoin money laundering operation that he's done through BTC-e to Mount Gox, the collapse of Mount Gox. So I don't know if the Russians' extradition carries that much weight. It seems like a desperate try out of the hands of the U.S. And it also goes into a little bit further here on this article that came out today. It looks like this person did a little bit more research and actually states that because the courts ruled this, and it may go to the Supreme Court, it doesn't mean Vinnik will be extradited to Russia. So let me see, where does it say? Okay, it will be in Nikos. I don't even know how to say this long name. Nikos Parasakopoulos. I don't know how to say it, but obviously it's the Greek Minister of Justice who's going to be deciding the fate of Alexander Vinnik, and not the courts at all. And so he does state that there. So this is the article that came out today. It's a little bit more. It was a little bit more revealing, and how can I say, it told more information. And then when I go to the next article, let me see, which one of this is Crypto Coins News? No, it was Cointelegraph. Okay, it's a Cointelegraph, which came out on the 11th, the same day the source came out. This title, BTC's Vinnik, not U.S. Greek court rules. That's the title of it, and it's kind of a little misleading. And it seems like there wasn't much to the story. Like, look how short this story is. It left out a lot of details. Now, if you were to look at these two articles, I mean, there's definitely some kind of conflict in how these articles are written. They're talking about the same thing, sourced from the same information, but the narratives are different. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Are these news source media, these crypto coins news source media, are they spinning it?
I don't think they're spinning it. I think Cointelegraph is not the strongest Bitcoin news source out there. I think Crypto Coins is a little bit better. I think what it is with a lot of these cryptocurrency news places is they don't have people on the ground to ask these questions. They're not making telephone calls. They're not making emails. They're not making contacts. They're not actually acting like reporters. They're just regurgitating whatever translated Greek news story, whether it be from the television, radio, or someone sourced them, the newspapers, and just regurgitating it. And maybe they might do a little confirmation with the U.S. Justice Department just to get a quote. But it's not necessarily like real journalism here. That's why these articles are so short. They're not in depth. They're not citing sources, and you get this like conflicting and misleading, not only titles but misinformation in here sometimes. And I think that's the case here with the overall. I honestly don't know what to make with it. I do think, though, in the end, that Vinnik may still end up going to Russia, because I do honestly think that Russia does have a vested interest in making sure he comes back to Russia. It's just a matter about how much you're willing to push the issue and whether or not the U.S. is going to back down.
I don't think the U.S. is going to back down with that much money being laundered, $4 billion, plus the theft of Mt. Gox, and also I think BTC camp.
But Mt. Gox is not a U.S. case. It's a Japanese case. The U.S. doesn't have jurisdiction over Mt. Gox. And while there are some claims being made, they're being made in Japan. The U.S. has no jurisdiction over Mt. Gox. There is no case filings against Mark Karopoulos or anyone associated with Mt. Gox right now here in the U.S. At least that's not something that's been announced by the Department of Justice. And time is ticking on that with some of the type of charges that they can file against anyone, because of my understanding, money laundering charges are like 5 years, maybe 7 years. And Mt. Gox collapse was like 2014, maybe 2013, some of these things that were happening. I mean, when are they going to file these charges?
I think it actually collapsed 2014.
Yeah.
But, you know, there were a lot of U.S. customers at Mt. Gox.
Yeah, there were a lot of U.S. customers, but did they file the appropriate paperwork? Does the U.S. even have jurisdiction to what was going on? Because if you remember, it wasn't until 2013 that the U.S. even made any type of regulatory stance. So all of the stuff that happened from the WISEC report about Mt. Gox, about the thefts and the fraud that was occurring, started all the way back from the beginning to 2011 to almost 2013, around the time that it started to collapse. So what charges are going to be filed? What claims does anyone really have to make? And does the U.S. even have legitimate case or cause for charges? To be frank,
well, it seems like they did, because they're charging him, they're extraditing him, and so it's almost like saying, well, what about you know, drug lords out in Colombia or South America? Well, none of these people step foot in America whatsoever.
But
none of them are U.S. citizens, but they've been extradited.
Well, some of the case with the Mt. Gox is because it's actually in Japanese jurisdiction. All of it has a legal body and provenance in Japan. As a legal company. Well, but
yeah, but this is more than the Mt. Gox. But
it is the more about
the theft of Mt. Gox.
The other two hacking cases are U.S. based companies. So that's really where their bulk of their charges against Vinnik are, these U.S. based cases, and they're trying to tie these customers from Mt. Gox into it. But what customer has come forward to file charges against Mt. Gox? I haven't really heard anything. I've heard everything going through Japan. I haven't heard anything going through the U.S. Any claims?
I think the civil claim, all the civil claims of the bankruptcy is going through Japan. But
and the criminal. There is a criminal case.
Oh yeah, there was. He went to. Oh, was it? What did he do? I think he was found not guilty. I don't think he was guilty.
No, there was a trial. There hasn't been a decision. There hasn't been a decision. There has been decisions about the creditors. The creditors are going to sell those Bitcoins. They've made that decision and what they're going to do with it. But there hasn't been anything on the criminal case that Mark Karopoulos is going through right now. Japan goes really slow with this. They're very exact and very precise when they do these type of trials. There hasn't been a decision. There have been headlines that there was a decision that he was not guilty or guilty.
Well, it seems like he's cooperating, and I don't think he's in jail. I think he's out and about, seems like.
He's out on bail, but he can't leave the country.
He's out? Okay. So, but I don't think he's, you know, in a prison cell. So, it seems like, this is just my opinion, you know, the trial's still going on, but it really turns out, it seems like he was just, I wouldn't say he was gullible, but it seems like he was a victim throughout this, and the community was quick to vilify Mark Karopoulos.
He was not a victim.
No? What do you think?
He was grossly incompetent. He bought a business. He did not do his due diligence. When he was made aware of the problem, he didn't fix the problem, and he actively sought to hide and cover up what was going on with his company. He openly admitted it in the Japanese court that he was responsible for the Willy bot, which pumped the price of Bitcoin through Mt. Gox. And since Mt. Gox was 80% of all Bitcoin transactions and buys, it pumped the price of Bitcoin to hide the fact that they didn't have funds, that they were insolvent, and they had been insolvent for a very long time. He is not a victim. He is very much a criminal and a fraudster. Now, the big problem is whether or not Jeb McCaleb, who sold him an insolvent company, is going to get caught up in all this as well.
Yeah, there was I think there was a book that came out about Mt. Gox and its collapse. I was just reading about it briefly, and it did mention about Jeb McCaleb, that pretty much he sold them an insolvent exchange.
Yes.
It turns out that's what really happened. And so the book, so the summary says, I guess it's enticing to get you to buy the book. But what I found interesting was the whole name in Japanese, Chinese characters. I guess they call it kanji characters. Satoshi Nakamoto was actually created by Mt. Gox, an employee from Mt. Gox. So when you do like a wiki search or you look up Satoshi Nakamoto, that Japanese character is actually not from Satoshi Nakamoto at all. It was selected by one of the employees at Mt. Gox. And do you by any chance know what it actually means or it says?
The Japanese version of Satoshi Nakamoto's name? No.
Yes. I think it means history and philosophy. I think it means in between history and philosophy.
Okay.
My rough translation. I might have to reconfirm that, but basically that's what the name in the Chinese characters mean in Satoshi Nakamoto, is in between philosophy and history. Well, but if you read it, it does say Satoshi Nakamoto, but apparently it was just created by some employee from Mt. Gox, probably someone who's Japanese, most likely.
Well, that makes sense.
So I thought that was interesting. So even the Chinese character or Japanese Chinese characters of the name was just fabricated out of thin air for the most part, and I thought that was interesting. I thought that might have been actually Satoshi Nakamoto came up with that, and it had some meaning because there was I think it did mean history, in between history and philosophy. This is the literal meaning of it. But let me go on to this next one, the last article here. This is where the source actually came from, which came on the 11th, and I think this is the original source of the news. When you read it, the headline is misleading. I think you're right. The guy who was doing the first article, on the 11th, what was it? I forgot. The one that wasn't very short and incomplete. Let me see if I can get this all translated. Will it translate for me? Let's see if it'll translate. I'm not sure if this is Russian or Greek.
It looks like Greek characters.
It won't translate for me. That sucks. Well, the link is in the news. The link is in the notes. Sorry about that. If you do get it translated, the headline says something like, Vinnik will be extradited to Russia. But as you read the news, as you read the article, it actually comes down and says that even though, oh, here it is, finally, translate. Okay, let's translate this thing. If you read the rest of the article, it actually says that the courts have decided to extradite Vinnik to Russia, but at the same time, it's done the same thing. It's going to do the same thing for for the U.S. apparently, and that's why it's going to the Supreme Court. But it doesn't matter because, again, the I guess the Minister of Justice is the one who's has the ultimate decision in deciding Vinnik's fate. And so that's let's see if it goes up here. Greek court approved the extradition of Vinnik to Russia, but I think they also approved the extradition to the U.S. So that's what's going on here, and this is the source of the news. And if you just keep reading, it just clearly states that it doesn't mean he's going to go to Russia, although it was a probably nice little headline grabber, but it's not over yet. It's going to be left to one person to decide the fate of Vinnik. And considering what the charges are, $11,500 of fraudulent, charges, or, you're looking at possibly millions and billions of dollars of money laundering charges. I don't know what the weight of Russia is going to be, other than this might have been a try, Vinnik, as an effort to bring him back to Russia and maybe do a favor for the government, because I think you also mentioned Russia is going to start creating their own national currency, cryptocurrency.
Yeah, I saw the headline. I hadn't clicked it because there's so much weird news this weekend. But I saw that headline. I was like, okay, I'm just going to wait a couple days on that to find out whether or not that has any traction and if it's really true or not. Because there's been lots of weird stuff coming out of Russia. Putin says this, Putin says that. Miners are coming to Russia. Miners are not coming to Russia. There's like the Whopper coin. There's all sorts of like weird stuff going on in Russia right now. I do think, really, just to kind of sum up the whole Vinnik thing, is I think it will come down to what the value of Bitcoin is going to be when and how much they push it, because allegedly, according to the WIDSEC security report, he still may control up to 200K of Mt. Gox's of the Mt. Gox 1.5 million Bitcoins that gone through there. And I guess there was like maybe up to 800,000 Bitcoins that might have been stolen from Mt. Gox, that he controls 200K, or at least is aware of the access to the wallets. And that's a lot of Bitcoin just sitting in control of BTC-e. And it's not even certain if the U.S. government, when they seized the BTC servers and the website, whether or not they actually even have the private keys to all those coins. Because I do know that the BTC website is back up, but with only half of their inventory. So
I think whatever Bitcoins were on the exchange is, I do believe those were seized, and the rest was in a cold wallet. And that's kind of reason why when the new BTC, the WEX exchange, I think it's called, they're offering a 45% haircut. Yeah. So 45% of the total value of all the coins they had were on the exchange on a hot wallet, and I think that was seized. And so, somebody has that. Either somebody.
The U.S. government said the same thing about the Silk Road marketplace, and there's still a chunk of coins that they don't have control over. So maybe the BTC people don't have control of those private keys, but I don't know. I'm not sure if the U.S. government has control of those private keys. So. Well,
I'm not sure either, but if they're on a hot wallet and the wallet is on that server, the private keys are on that server, they may actually have control of it. So if not, then I can see why they want Vinnik, because if they think he's in control of the exchange, he was the administrator, it probably means he has the passwords.
Yeah, it's kind of why the U.S. is trying to extradite Variety Jones. I forgot what his real name is, but that was his handler on the Silk Road Marketplace. He's currently in Thailand. I haven't heard anything since February about his case, but they're seeking to extradite him back to the U.S. And he's implied that he has control over 500K of Bitcoin that's from the Silk Road marketplace. Like he has control of, I guess, the last set of wallets associated with that marketplace.
Well, he's a rich man, and I don't think we'll ever hear from him ever again. He probably got like plastic surgery, you know, and he's probably a girl.
He's in custody. He's in custody.
Oh, he's in custody. Okay.
Yeah, he's in custody.
You know, if he was in Thailand, he probably turned into a girl. Probably got a sex change and then changed his fingerprints. You know, for that much money he had right now, because Bitcoin has gone up like even at the peak of Mount Gox, it's gone up 5 times the amount. So whatever he possibly had times
plus Bitcoin
5,
cash.
you know, times, that's a lot of money. Cash, that's right. And if he keeps holding on a little bit more, he'll have SegWit 2x coins and maybe coin gold, you know, and
yeah, that scam coin, which is very
those scam coins coming out.
Yeah. But yeah, you know, it'd be interesting to see what they auction off and what they have hold. I know there's a lot of people that are making claims because they're stating that they had legitimate accounts and, you know, they were in compliance, like with at least within their country. Why is the U.S., you know, holding their funds? You know, so I think it's a bit more of a mess than I think the last time the United States did this to a major Bitcoin company, which is what Silk Road Marketplace was. So it'll be interesting to see what the legal battle is going to turn out stateside, especially considering the value of Bitcoin has gone so dramatically up.
Yeah, and also the market sites. What were they? Dream Market and Hasana and Alphabay. They were all shut down too. And then they got Alexander Vinnik. And not only that, Alexander Craze, who apparently hung himself. Which, you know, when I first heard that, I thought maybe he really did hang himself. But I'm starting to think now that maybe he was killed. You know, and I'm a little fearful for Vinnik's life here, because he may end up dead in a jail cell or on the way to wherever he's being extradited, depending where he's being extradited. True. Because he actually may have some critical information.
Yeah, I saw a very interesting story about the gentleman who allegedly, and it is alleged, controlled Alphabay, that hung himself, that he wasn't actually the administrator or controller, that he was very low on the totem pole, or a fall guy, if you will, and there was somebody else that he actually, much like Ross Ulbricht, he actually really did sell the place. He sold Alphabay to somebody else and had been out for a while. And that might have been the reason why he may have been killed, or he wasn't really killed anyways, and it's just a story that the government put out there, and he's in witness protection because he flipped. You know, there's all sorts of theories about it. Yeah.
Yeah, that might be one. That's a good story, that he flipped, and they just picture of him lying down with the rope around his neck, and yeah, he's dead. Because, you know, during the Silk Road, that's pretty much what they did to Ross Ulbricht. They took a picture of the administrator, apparently assassinated.
Yeah.
And that's how they were going to charge Ross Ulbricht with murder for hire. Yeah. That never really happened. It's a phony picture.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, the guy's name is Curtis Green. He's in Utah. He's no longer in jail. He cut a deal. He testified and everything. I don't think he actually ended up testifying, but he made, you know, an affidavit and things of that nature. But yeah, but the reason why there's no murder charges against Ross Ulbricht is because of those two corrupt agents, Mark Force and I forgot what the other guy's name, but the Secret Service agent and the FBI. Yeah. They were involved in that. One was actually the hitman, and the other one was the one who's pretending to be the contractor to perform the hit. You know.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So corrupted.
So I mean, it seems like anything can go.
Yeah.
Story. I mean, there's definitely enough. I would say espionage going on. A lot of information. A lot of money laundering. I think that's for sure. There was a lot of money laundering. But you had to move drug money.
But isn't money laundering if the terms of the concept of Bitcoin is not a currency, it wasn't even defined as property? is it legally defined in
Well,
the
it's
time of the
money.
case
It's
as
money
money laundering?
laundering if you're trying to obscure the source of your revenue. So you don't really have to use Bitcoin. I mean, you can use homes, you can
Mm-hmm.
use Tide detergent, you can
Mm-hmm.
use Beanie Babies. But I definitely think a lot of money laundering was involved, and they used Bitcoin
Mm-hmm.
because it was easy to transfer, and you know, I think that's probably the one use case because once you send Bitcoin, it's gone, it's sent over, and that's
Mm-hmm.
it. And there's a limited amount, and there might have been a marketplace for it, which perhaps gave it its value initially. But I do think, considering all the ransomware,
Mm-hmm.
all the dark markets, and then on top of that, all the thefts, money laundering has definitely happened in all these cases. So there was a way to turn this dirty money into clean money. So, essentially, since Bitcoins don't exist at all, you can't physically, seize them. And since they're not even real, it's internet magic money.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to be seized by the government and to be auctioned off, or hard to anyway, but it has. So I think it was a really easy choice to do that. You're sending money to a different country, and then you're selling the Bitcoins to either the local market to be reused again, whatever drugs, or to be sold to people who had ransomware, and
Mm-hmm.
and it was a great transfer value. And so money laundering is probably high on the list, and I think that's what the U.S. government is really pushing for: money laundering, wire fraud, because those are
Mm-hmm.
very broad and very general, so that you can
They're,
almost apply it to anything. Like,
they are very broad. They are very general. I don't know. I It just seems very weird, the terms that they're using and applying to these type of cases. And I know the government's going to make it fit. I just personally don't believe it actually meets those particular terms. Um, but that's what the case is. They're definitely drug selling and stuff like that. I'm not sure if the money laundering case, if someone were to argue that case, if it were a good enough lawyer were to actually go against the government and go through the whole appellate process and all the way up to the court, the Supreme Court or whatever, can the government actually sustain the argument that it is money laundering, that there is a value transfer that's being hidden, if you will, that obscuring
I
property?
think so, because you're definitely able to transfer value across borders,
Mm-hmm.
uh, illegally and legally, right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're doing any criminal activity, and it's not that hard, like ransomware is a criminal activity, it's extortion in some degree, or it is extortion actually. Uh, you know, Profits from your drug sales, profiting from a hack, all definitely criminal activity, and it's money laundering once you commit a crime and you try to profit from that crime and you're trying to hide the profits. And I think Bitcoin's was definitely being used in this particular case.
Mm-hmm.
If everything is true, that Mt. Gox coins were funneled through, ransomware was funneled through, uh, darknet money,
Mm-hmm.
darknet Bitcoins were funneled through, all through the BTC-e exchange. So if that's true, then definitely there's something there. But I think everyone will have their day in court, whether it be in Russia, whether it be in the U.S. I highly doubt it'll be in Russia because $11,000, 11,500. I mean, it's almost like someone made it up. Like, how in the U.S., like after a certain amount, then
Mm-hmm.
it's like a federal crime. And if you look at the amount in Russian, I mean, I know it's converted to U.S. dollar, but like 11,500, dollars, U.S. dollars worth. It almost seems like they came up with a number that would constitute a federal crime just to say something on Vinnik, so we need to extradite him to Russia since he's a U.S. citizen. It's just a small amount compared to trying to charge him for, which
It
is in
is
the
a small
billions of dollars.
amount. I think what the Russians can argue is how can they guarantee that Russian citizens can enter Greece without being picked up or extradited to the U.S. without prior knowledge? You know, there's treaties across the borders about all these matters. And what it boils down to, I think, is who has proper jurisdiction over Vinnik. I mean, the reason why the U.S. is extraditing Vinnik from Greece is because they have a cooperative agreement with Greece when it comes to criminal matters. So does Russia. And so Greece is going to have to decide which one of these cooperative treaty agreements is more valid than the other. Because the Russians...
Well, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, I think I think they're probably going to go and extradite him in the U.S. Seems like the U.S. really, really wants him really bad, and they have a lot of charges, and the amount is significantly high, and so it doesn't look for Vinnik. Doesn't look good for Vinnik, in my opinion.
Well,
credit for trying.
Disappears prior to extradition.
I'm sorry?
Whether the Russians snatch him out or he... It would be interesting to see if he disappears, if the ruling comes in that he is going to be extradited to the U.S. and he failed on his appeal to either remain in Greece or to go to Russia. It would be interesting to see if he disappears. Because right now
disappears or dies.
He's not in U.S. custody. So
I'm sure the U.S. has some foot soldiers out there on the ground, just waiting for him. Probably gonna, they're in some hotel. They're gonna wait it out.
Don't discount them Russians, man. They're pretty cagey people.
Russians, they got Russians all over the place. The Russians are all over the place.
Yeah, they're just as skilled, They're just well trained as the FBI. They have their their counterpoints or whatever. But this is not going to be decided anytime soon. It's going to take a while. We probably won't hear anything until probably either right around the end of Thanksgiving or right before Christmas.
Okay, but do you really? What I want to know is, like, do you think that there is some going on here?
Hello?
Hello, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah,
I wanted to know, do you think there's some political maneuvers going on with Russia and the U.S. over Vinnik? Are they fighting over Vinnik just because it's?
But they're also fighting who's the big player and superpower in the world, and this is just one of those battles. But I do think they're fighting over Vinnik.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I think they are fighting over Vinnik, and he must have something really important in his head to fight over, at least to fight over. And so that's
control of 200K in Bitcoin. That's a lot for the U.S. to auction off.
Yeah, which is worth a lot of money right now. So
it is worth a lot of money, and as much as people laughed at the U.S. for auctioning up, that's what the U.S. government is supposed to do. It's not supposed to keep people's property. Granted, I don't like the nature of the way they seize a lot of people's property, but they're not supposed to be keeping it. It should be like rare instances that they keep a property and it's because for a purpose, and then they sell it after that purpose is done. So it's not a Bitcoin that they can put into the coffers, or the fiat they can put in the coffers of the U.S. Marshal Service or the FBI.
Right. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was the Ethereum hard fork. And have you heard anything? What have you heard, or what are your feelings on the Ethereum hard fork coming up?
Well, I know it's delayed because the Parity wallet, the same wallet that was responsible for some hacks that happened early in the summer because of vulnerability, is not up to snuff. And so they've delayed it until Parity can publish a code is compliant with the hard fork, so that the servers don't cause a split. And I think that's good. Two, this is a hard fork that's a long time coming. There's been a lot of changes, but the community as a whole has known why this fork is happening, what the purpose of the fork is, and has consensus. It just does. They have consensus on this fork. It'd be interesting to see if the transition from proof of work to proof of stake does for the community. Will everything just go into, tied up into nodes? Will people start doing things for ICOs? It really, I think, is going to change the nature of the utility of Ethereum.
Yeah, what do you, it's kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I think is this is my opinion of what's going on with Ethereum. Ethereum has always made that promise of going to proof of stake.
Mm-hmm. From the very beginning.
They've always been, from the very beginning, and they've always delayed it and delayed it. And it seems like every time it's an 18-month from every hard fork. There's an 18th-month delay reset. And so it just gets delayed. And it seems like every time they come close to almost going to a proof of stake, they have to do a hard fork. And it's not because they want to delay, the proof of stake and the difficulty bomb. There's a difficulty bomb set in, which I think is another kind of ruse, in my opinion. It's almost like a red herring. And the difficulty bomb is basically that the difficulty will exponentially increase to the point where you can't even mine any Ethereum. So they have to hard fork every 18 months. They have to, if they haven't figured out how to go to a proof of stake or how to disrupt this $30 billion market without everything going, to hell or falling apart. And I have a feeling that they haven't figured that out, because if you go to their website, they even say they don't even know how to do it. So
it's just a roadmap.
They always have a hard fork. Yeah, they always have a hard fork right before they get to doing a proof of stake, and their excuse is always like, "Oh, we're doing an upgrade. We're going to do this. We're gonna make it faster. We're gonna make it easier. They're always gonna do something, except go to proof of stake, and they always add in the delay of the difficulty bomb. They always add that in, and then they give them another 18 months. And I bet you it'll be another 18 months before they get close to, I think it's called Metropolis.
Yeah.
But they'll all of a sudden they'll say, "Hey, there's an emergency. We found a bug." There's always a bug in Ethereum for some reason. There's an emergency. We found a bug, and while we're gonna fix this bug, we're going to go ahead and do an upgrade. And right now, where they're doing Schnorr signatures, so it's private. They're going to have, faster transactions and all this stuff. And, next thing they'll probably do coin mixing in the next one. And then next hard fork that they're going to do coin mixing. So whatever the rage is. And on top of that, they'll probably do they need some kind of upgrade to fix a bug. So they could do Lightning Network on their channel, and they'll be able to do cross-atomic swaps. It just gets kind of ridiculous that it's been delayed, I think 4, maybe 5 times now, and it is always something. It always seems to be in line with they're fixing bugs and they're doing some upgrades, but they're eventually going to get to Metropolis. Just another 18 months again.
Yeah, they probably should have just gone straight out proof of stake when they first started out.
They probably couldn't. That's why they didn't. And then there's
other proof of stake coins out there prior to the existence of Ethereum. Was it Purecoin?
Yeah, I think it was Purecoin. So it kind of makes you wonder what's the problem? What's the deal? I don't know how Purecoin works. I haven't researched it. But you're right. There are other proof of stakes.
I mined it very early on when it first came out. I think I have some in a DAT file on a hard drive somewhere. But yeah, it was very early on. It was an interesting concept. It didn't really grow so much, but it's still there. But I know that proof.
And what are your thoughts on?
Huh?
Yeah, what are your thoughts on proof of stake?
I really don't understand it, and I also don't quite like it so much because I think isn't Dash a proof of stake with the master nodes, locking up the stuff with the master node stuff?
It's not quite a proof of stake. It definitely acts like a proof of
It
stake,
does
but the
act like
master
a proof
nodes
of stake.
don't really generate, or supposedly having all those coins doesn't generate more coins.
Mm-hmm.
They basically they take it from the miners.
Yeah.
And so a percentage of what's being mined from the miners goes to the master nodes
Mm-hmm.
for locking up the coins and retaining its value. And
Yeah.
so the burden is on the miners with Dash, as far as I understand. Now, unless
Yeah.
they change it, but as far as I know, they still have a proof of work. People do mine for them, but a percentage of what is mined goes to master nodes, and that's
Yeah,
how their system is set up.
and that's how people are making their money. They're like staking these coins. The kind of scuzziest one I see is Rego coin. And what really bothered me when Dash came out is like very early on, it was like, what was it, 10,000 Dash, or it's like 100,000 Dash? It's like a very high number of Dash you had to lock up, right? But there was no mechanism in place to where, as the value of Dash goes up, then the amount of coins that you have to lock up would go down. So it means that early adopters, or people that have significant amount of wealth, can purchase, amount of Dash and lock it up and be part of the master nodes and have some say and control and get that that money, if you will. But everybody else is kind of locked out, and it seemed like a recreation of the existing financial structure that we are in. I don't understand how that benefits anybody.
Are you talking about the proposals, like the master nodes
not just the
vote on proposals?
but just the concept of locking up Dash. And what's Dash now? Is it like a $300 coin still, or is it
about $300?
Yeah, okay. So 10,000 coins is like $300,000. The average person, the average user, doesn't have that to lock up purchase, buy, and lock that up away. You have to be somebody who already has money, which is kind of the point of cryptocurrency. Is you don't really have to be somebody that has the money. The level of participation you can build and grow from. There's mechanics built in, like within Bitcoin, to where you can grow and build your Bitcoin wealth. It's very easy for you to do so because it's very fractional for you to participate in and do things and participate and have a say within the community. It seems like they locked up the power of people having a full say in the community by having such a high amount of coins, and no mechanism when the value of the coin goes up to X to say, okay, we go down to 9,000, then we go down to 8,000, then we go down to 7,000, then we go down to 5, 4, 3, to eventually, like, it could be like 10 Dash, and you can be part of the masternode community, and really everyone can fully participate within the mechanics of Dash. I don't know. It just seemed very weird and odd to me personally.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Especially with the way Dash was supposedly pre-mined, and whether it really happened or it didn't happen, or how they could prove it or not prove it. But it's been talked about so much that I think people already have an idea or already know about it. I think they're just okay with it. So if they're part of the Dash community, they've already accepted the fact that a lot of it's pre-mined and they don't mind, And at the time, I think the amount of Dash you need to run a master node was actually not 10,000, but 1,000.
Was it 1,000?
And this is back when Dash was only like 1,000. Yeah, you need 1,000 Dash. Okay. And this is back when Dash was like $2 or $3. They came up with this idea. So it only cost you $1,000, $2,000 back then. But now you're right; it would cost you 30,000, or not 30, more than that, $300,000 at the current price of 300. So all those people who may or may not have received pre-mined coins, who were early miners, because the early miners didn't have to share any of their block rewards with anyone.
Yeah.
And so if it was pre-mined, if there was a mining process that exponentially increased the block rewards to early miners, there's some conspiracy in that, and there might be there might be some fraud in doing that. But you know, and then on top of that, the master nodes themselves, if it's true that these were all pre-mined, or a small group of people have a majority of the Dash coins locked up in master nodes, they also dictate the proposals.
They do.
And so they could be, you know, giving a proposal to their brother, their sister, their friend, their cousin, to other people who are on the master nodes, who are running master nodes. You know, they're giving themselves the reward of the proposal. And so in a lot of ways, it's and I think that's one of the reasons that's been holding Dash back, is those kind of skeletons in the closet.
It's those skeletons in the closet, and the fact that when you look at it, it's like, well, I can't participate fully into this. I can participate pretty much fully in
Bitcoin. Not right now.
Dash or Bitcoin?
Well, I mean Dash. Like, it costs $300,000 to run a master node.
No, you can't. You can't participate fully. In Bitcoin, you can. Now, I can build a mining rig for Bitcoin. It may not make as much money, but I can still participate in the network. I might eat the cost of building the rig and the power and all that, and I might not just care, and I consider that just a cost of business and write it off, because I'm more concerned about the long-term value of the coin I'm going to receive, and go from there. I can have a node or a full node. I can, you know, develop a wallet. I can figure things out and to participate fully at different levels of the community. I can even go onto the BIP forum and, you know, make comments on BIPs. You know, it's that open. Dash is not. And a lot of these staking coins are not. You have to be early in, basically early in and first out, and that's how people make their money. Some of these are coming like pump and dump scams, and they're providing no overall utility to the cryptocurrency space. Even if they have some pretty good or great ideas, that they're going to get lost in the sauce, where people are just going to poo-poo that great idea just because of the scuzziness that's surrounding, you know, proof of stake.
Yeah, there's one particular coin that is a fork of Dash. It's called PIVX.
Yes.
And that's the one that you need 10,000 coins.
Is
and
it?
Ironically, it's priced at around $3. So it's like 30,000, 10,000. Yeah, $30,000 just to run a master node.
Okay.
And you know, I do have some, because somebody sent some to me as just an experiment and asked me to just make a video about staking it or doing something with it. And so I know it has 0 transaction cost. So you can send a PIVX with 0 transaction cost. Same thing with Dash too. I do also have small donations in Dash, where I did an experiment if it can be transferred with 0 transfer fees, and they both can transfer different times, but it tells me that their network is not used that much. So, you know, if there's a low demand for their network, there's no need to charge any transactions. And I think it ranged from 10 minutes to a couple seconds, Dash and PIVX, to be transferred. And also the staking part, you know, PIVX was being mined. I think at some point they've gone to a full staking. They do have master nodes. And the problem with staking is that it rewards the early investors, the initial investors of the coin, and it keeps them rich perpetually at the expense of new investors or new people coming in. And, you know, that's a system that we're already in.
Yeah.
So why would I give up this system, which I'm already in that situation, and just go into a cryptocurrency of the same thing? It doesn't make any sense. And for the price to go up, you know, you need more people to push that price up. You're building a pyramid, except instead of, you know, the pyramid we're already in, you're building a pyramid for the crypto space. And a lot of them are pushing the proof of stake like it's going to be used as a currency. But a lot of these proof of stake coins, I don't see anybody like accepting it as payment. I don't see any merchants accepting it. I don't see any websites accepting it. You know, the proof of stake coins is really a bad idea. It's been proven not to work, and it also deflates or inflates. It's an inflationary currency, so the longer you have it, the more successful it is, the lower its value, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, it also is like, it's just mostly a mining tool, really. It's pretty much anyone who is capable of mining is the only one really benefiting for these type of coins, because they're selling it to, I guess you could say, the suckers that are buying it. But overall, I'm not seeing quite the utility that was promised with proof of stake. Now, Dash has a great marketing, which is why I think, because its visibility, people are getting into it, and then they're transitioning out rather quickly, and there's a pretty big turnover, if you will. That's why the price fluctuates. It'd be interesting to see when the bottom's going to hit with Dash, because unless I'm seeing Dash like on, I don't know, Purse.io or somewhere significant where you can purchase and buy things with Dash, it's a very nascent community. It really is. It's not as big as they think they are.
Yeah, they like to they really like to make them seem out. I think they like to make themselves seem a little bit bigger than they really are. They have tried very hard in marketing. They probably spent a lot of money with new investors' money who bought into the coin, spending that money on being listed on exchanges for a US dollar pair, trying to get into the peer-to-peer market, just making it seem more attractive overall, and selling it. I can't that's the only way I can describe it. They're really selling their coin, literally. They're selling it, and so they've done well in that regard. But other than that, I mean, they haven't really broken into mainstream or even into the cryptocurrency space, much like Bitcoin has. It's Bitcoin has become a naturally growing phenomenon, which is hard to replicate because of the way it happened and when it happened, and because it was the first to happen and has that. I still think it does have that network effect, and it's very strong, and it's still very strong. Although I think Ethereum is catching up to it. But the only reason I think Ethereum has their network effect is because they're really being backed by what I would call Wall Street or Silicon Valley type of people. They're taking that platform and literally turning it into an exchange on itself. They're creating tokens, and they're dumping it to the general public, dumping it to their fellow peers, and eventually their fellow peers are going to run out of money to dump it onto other people, and I think that's why they're making this big push into this forking. Also, they're pushing all over the world. They're going to China, and they're trying to take this model, which I think is more or less a pyramid model, again, another pyramid, into other countries. And because they're looking for new greater fools to pump up the price. And if I was to speculate on Ethereum, I wouldn't bother with any ERC20 tokens. I would just buy Ethereum, because if you buy Ethereum, essentially you have your hand in all the ERC tokens that they create, because everybody needs to buy those. Everybody needs to buy Ethereum to buy those ERC tokens, and so you'd be better off not buying any ERC20 tokens and just buying Ethereum if you were smart. But if everybody does that, then no one would buy ERC tokens. Then the price would crash. So hopefully I didn't give up the secret sauce on Ethereum.
Unless the ERC20 tokens actually become, securities and are regulated and are valid, and then you can see a stronger use case of Ethereum. But then by then, I think most people who initially participated would have cashed out, and you're not going to see any like regular people being able to participate in Ethereum, because then it becomes an institutional investment vehicle, and not maybe the initial promise that people thought Ethereum could be. Because there is a use case for ICOs when you have a valid product and you have something to put out. Maybe just the level of funds that they're raising and maybe the methodology they're raising it is not the best way to go about it. But there, I think, again, we talked about this before, I think there is a case for ICOs. I'm just not sure overall what is the Ethereum case, because I'm not really seeing too many smart contracts outside of just tokenizing everything.
Well, the case for Ethereum is for you to donate your money to somebody else, and that's literally what it's good for. If if they were able to securitize their token and be regulated, then there would be no purpose for the token itself. They could just start a company and issue company securities to the general public, and it's called an IPO, initial public offering. The fact that they're doing an ICO to bypass all that is, I think, for several reasons. It's obviously they're trying to get money from the general public, all right? And that's all they're doing. They're just raising money with no liability, no promise,
which
nothing.
It's not bad in itself. I mean, you have, what is it, Indiegogo, Kickstarter. I mean, there's a lot of junk on all those places as well, but there's also a lot of good stuff. I mean, there's Patreon, there's use cases for that, but those platforms utilize, credit cards, and those, the people that are kickstarting or Indiegogo or Patreon still have the whole merchant dilemma. But I mean, I don't know. I think Ethereum just went up in value too high, too quickly, too fast for it not to be able to have the time to work out its bugs and dilemmas, which is something that Bitcoin has been able to do. I mean, it has the benefit of being the first and being a slow grower. But all these other coins that are going to come to market, they don't have that time. They just don't. They actually have to be, when they show up, a complete and full 100% in essence product. And I'm not sure that the people that are developing, whether it be tokens or coins, fully understand or realize that.
Well, the other thing about Ethereum is, they're hard forking, and there's rumors that there may be a split on Ethereum, and I think that's another reason why the price has jumped recently along with Bitcoin, because the BTC-e hard fork, and I don't know how true that is. I think that's rubbish though. But as far as Ethereum, Ethereum hard forks quite a bit, and if there's a chance that it hard forks and there's a split because them eventually going to a proof of stake, maybe people are willing to invest in it, because I'm not sure if it's this one or the next one, but supposedly this hard forking was supposed to, quote unquote, cause a split because people may not want to upgrade and continue to mine on the old chain and everything. I'm not sure how true that is, because it's Ethereum is so centralized, and they have a cult, very cultish like following. I mean, for all the things that have gone wrong, they still believe in Ethereum, and I think that goes to the power of people's belief, despite the fact that I think they know deep down in their heart that it's not a very lasting technology, and they're taking advantage of it purely to profit off of the price swings and selling to the greater full. And I think that's why they have so much ERC20 tokens and so much hype behind it. And again, I do think it's because of the people behind it. The supporters of Ethereum seem to be already, in my opinion, already somewhat wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
They also know the game of trading securities. So you're creating something out of thin air, selling it, dumping it at a higher price. You know, if you create it from nothing, it costs you zero money. And even if you sold it for 50 cents and you got 1 million of these, you know, that's still a lot of money. And these are kind of like the things I saw, you know, during the financial crisis, where they're just packaging securities or derivatives, in this case, tokens, and then they're pushing it to the people, to the public, as if this is some kind of great technology that's going to revolutionize the world. And on top of that, you can take this token and speculate on it as a retail investor, as an end user. And not only that, the initial push of ICO tokens were almost offering these tokens as if they had a stake in that company or that ICO token, that ICO chain that they built off of the Ethereum chain. So if that chain, that ERC20 chain gains value, that token gain value that you can redeem either with the company or out to the open market. And I think that's what really allured a lot of what I would say, well, some of them were wealthy investors because they were the ones that got in first and got the cheapest for the tokens. And then the next wave of fools got in after that, after the initial wealthy people who bought it at a heavily discounted price, sold it to them, and then eventually it got out to the retail market, onto the exchanges. And so I think that's what's driving Ethereum, and has nothing to do with the technology, has nothing to do with Vitalik. I think Vitalik is nothing more than a patsy, a scapegoat. So when all this comes down, we're going to just point to Vitalik and say, he did it. You know, get him, he did it. And so I don't know how long this is going to go on. I mean, the prices just continue to keep going up and up and up. But if I learned anything from my 3 years of actually being in this cryptocurrency space, and then watching other markets, how they oscillate up and down, the price is going to crash. And I think that's when everyone's going to complain. Everyone's going to complain. Even Bitcoiners are going to complain to probably core developers or to the miners that they caused the crashing of the price because they're infighting. People are just going to blame everyone. And it'll be interesting to see who's going to stay and who's going to go. Because every crash, the people who are, I think, just speculators and superficial, they're the first ones to bail out. And then hopefully we'll have a new wave, a whole new, I guess, generation of people who are committed to seeing this through, and it'll be more than the last time that, you know, when the dip or when the downturn happened. So hopefully we'll have more people who will support the price instead of going down to zero. It'll maybe, you know, go down to 1,000 for Bitcoin. If Ethereum's still alive, maybe it'll go down to 100. The altcoins, I think they're already bleeding to some degree because we haven't reached the peak market cap. The peak market cap was about $180 billion. We're still underneath that. And the altcoins are still trending down. So, you know, I don't know what's going to happen because the altcoin market has exploded this time around. It really has. And in some ways, it's supported the price of Bitcoin.
Well, there are altcoins that do have some utility. There are a lot of altcoins that people are going to realize why I'm getting this altcoin when I already have, I don't know, Litecoin or something else. And so there's going to be a lot of stuff that's going to just basically fade away. I don't think with the way that the internet works and the nature of networks that I don't think you're going to see chains actually completely disappear or go to zero. As long as someone's mining it and running a node, it's going to always be there. It's just not going to have significant value, if you will. I'm not sure if it's going to go to zero. but it might be worth something. I mean, I think this is the first time in any sense of a marketplace where really a fraction of a penny truly matters. It's not something that's played with as in like the commodities market, where the half a penny is something that they kind of play with and toy with, where a half a penny kind of does have some value. It'd be interesting to see whether or not SegWit 2x actually occurs, and if there is a fork with no replay protection, which chain survives, if there's going to be a chain to survive, if there's a fork, where the cryptocurrency goes after that, where Bitcoin goes after that, because there's a lot of run up right before this significant change. And that's kind of scary for me personally, as someone who's been in this space for a very long time, to feel that there's a lot of people that don't understand what's about to happen. And they're going to have a conniption when, if there is a fork and things go bad, they're going to start blaming everybody for it. And when they do stuff like that, that's when the government comes in hard and regulates this industry and is not going to be in the favor of the people.
Yeah, what do you feel about forks? Do you think it's helpful short term, long term? I mean,
I don't have a problem with forks, whether they're soft or hard forks, as long as the code is sound, as long as it's well planned, as long as people are aware of it and there is consensus. And if we are forking like we did with Bitcoin Cash and we're creating another coin, and it's because people truly fundamentally believe that they want a 2 megabyte increase and SegWit and want to put their money where their mouth is, then we just kind of have to let them go. My biggest concern is, and I understand the game theory aspect of the whole not putting replay protection in because they want to be the Bitcoin. Is that it might be a step too far. At the same time, I don't understand why Core is not doing enough to protect its chain. If it should put a replay protection on to protect itself. I mean, I'm not sure why the onus is on SegWit 2x, really. Shouldn't both of them have replay protections on their on the code? I mean, that would be sound to me personally, to make sure things go well or go okay and just let people go about their business. Because this is open source, this is voluntary. People can pretty much pick up their ball and go and do what they want, and either people are going to follow or they're not. And I think we're beginning to see whether or not just how much people are going to put their time, effort, and money in following certain concepts or certain ideas.
Yeah, I've been a little worried myself. I've been watching the whole situation kind of unfold. I mean, when SegWit was implemented, everyone was cheering and happy, which I wasn't so cheery and happy, because I knew that from that point on, when SegWit was activated to the planned hard fork, that was the time in which, you know, you had, and it was a very short time in reality, that people had to come to a realization that you may you may end up with two chains competing against each other. So you literally have two Bitcoin chains competing against each other. It's not like the Bitcoin Cash chain where they just forked off and created essentially an altcoin that we were the beneficiaries of receiving. I mean, I just got an extra $200-300, and a lot of people just dumped it. I only did a test of splitting it with a very small amount. I haven't even moved any of my Bitcoin Cash. And I don't plan on moving it, nor do I plan on moving my Bitcoin Gold or my SegWit. But since then, you know, it's almost been like, I think a lot of people know. I really do believe people know that this is going to happen, and it's a very different atmosphere in which the user activated soft fork happened, and then the SegWit 2x hard fork that is going to happen. It's different, and I think people I think a lot of people realize it. They don't want to admit that it will happen, but they're going to play as if they're trying to fight it. There's a lot of wallets already supporting, the hard fork. They're not supporting SegWit 2x, but I think they know, and some of the exchanges know, that this is coming.
And as
But
it
Phoenix,
should. I don't understand why people are upset by that. I mean, if there is going to be an upgrade, if it's going to be a contentious upgrade or hard fork, it's their responsibility if, in some cases, like with the exchanges, if they're the custodial control of someone else's property, they have a responsibility to do the best with that property. Wallets, same thing. They just have to do this if they want to remain in business. It's not picking a side. Now there's some that are doing this and they're not picking a side, and if you don't like that, you can get out of the wallet. And there's some people that are doing that, or getting off the exchanges and moving to somewhere else. But I think it's best for the community overall that there is an option, a viable option, a well-coded option, that people can choose what they do with their coins, and that decision is not being made by anyone else. That they actually have complete control, which is the whole point of cryptocurrencies. The whole point of Bitcoin is having control of your sovereign wealth. And that means making bad decisions, or horrible decisions, or great decisions, or having apathy and not doing anything. It's not for anyone else to make that decision for somebody else. So I don't understand why people are upset by these exchanges doing that, supporting the fork, making sure that their customers or their user base has the option of access. Or if they don't particularly like it, they're saying, go ahead and go off. That's fine. But we're providing this option for the users that want it, so that they have the choice to do what they need to do.
well, I guess to the end user, like
Mm-hmm.
you and me, it may not make a difference because essentially we will end up with two coins
Mm-hmm.
with two different chains. Uh, the stake, what's at risk, is the businesses that invested their money
Mm-hmm.
into creating this fork,
Mm-hmm.
and the miners who supported it, and then the developers who also support it or don't support it. So there's risk here, not for maybe you and me, the end user. The risk is for the miners who did support it or who did support it, the development team who supported and didn't support it, and the businesses that facilitate the users. I don't even know if they really even have any Bitcoins, which are the wallets, the exchanges. What else? Well, wallets, exchanges, and maybe merchant processors. They're risking it all.
If they
So
are
that's why it's
risking it,
contentious.
that's their choice to do with their business. It really is. If this is supposed to be a free market decision, then people are free to make bad marketing decisions. If it even is a bad marketing decision, I don't see how there is not possible for 2 versions or 3 versions of Bitcoin out there in the marketplace. I mean, look at all the altcoins that have come to an existence, or crypto coins have come to an existence. I think what we'll see is as many different types of options that people are going to try to see what works for them personally for their sovereign wealth. And there's going to be a sound choice, a good choice, a great choice, a bad choice, in between choice. This is a entirely new system. We're not even 10 years old, honestly. And we're going to make mistakes. We need to make mistakes. We need to have some failures. We need to have, the crashes and ups and downs and burns. People are going to lose money. They're not guaranteed to make money. They're not guaranteed to have a return of investment. Stuff is going to happen. And this, I think people fail to realize that, yes, while this started out as an experiment and significant value has gone up to where people are not considering an experiment, but it's still an experiment. Things can still go horribly wrong. And I think people need to keep that in mind when they're investing the amount of money they're investing into this and creating this new type of economic system from the ground up. Everything is not going to be successes and roses. There's going to be a lot of failure. There's going to be a lot of heartbreak. There's going to be a lot of loss. And if we can't honestly survive this, truly this fork this non-consensus that we're about to happen, then what are we going to do when we have bad regulation? What are we going to do when really seriously the institutions that don't really like cryptocurrency because they can't control it, or governments truly put their full weight and power against the cryptocurrency space? This is really minor compared to what could potentially happen to us.
Yeah, if we can't get along with each other, how can we band together and fight a hostile nation who may not like Bitcoin at all, and see it as a threat to their monetary policy? That is very real.
Not just one hostile nation, but several hostile nations at the same time.
Yes, several.
With different attack vectors.
Yes, that is true. And so this may be just a growing pain. Would you say this? And so would it be natural for us to fight each other and let one side win? Because my belief is the contentious hard fork part. Like, if people want to do a fork and do the replay protection, the two-way replay protection, they're essentially just creating an altcoin that just gave the holders an airdrop. And so that's kind of been the trend, and in some ways that's driven up the Bitcoin price, and to some degree the Ethereum price, and there's also been other altcoins that have done this too, and you've seen like a little bump in their price before the hard fork or the split, because everybody wants free coins, and then you got a little market created from that. So there's that, but when you have a contentious hard fork where the chances of the two chains surviving, well, that may be very low. And so I think that's the difference between this hard fork and any previous hard fork.
Be low. Because I think users are going to use both chains. And they will.
Well, I'm just taking the example like Ethereum and Ethereum Classic.
Yes.
Ethereum Classic, you're right, they're going to survive because all you need is a miner and some nodes, and a coin can't exist theoretically forever. But my argument has been that they'll basically just exist in obscurity, and one will be more dominant than the other. And that's kind of what's going to happen.
In this case, just because of the value of Bitcoin and the amount of resources that are out there, with Ethereum, when that hard fork happened, there wasn't as many resources in Ethereum as there is now. With Bitcoin, it's 10 times that. So I don't think the coin is going to obscurity, just like Bitcoin Cash hasn't gone to obscurity. It's going to be here. It may not be the dominant coin, but it's not going to obscurity. And I think with this particular fork, everyone points to Bitcoin Cash. It's not the same thing. Again, just because the previous result occurred doesn't mean it's going to occur again. I think there's going to be a split in the price. I think one's going to fluctuate higher for a while, and then one is going to be probably the true value coin. Which one that is a matter of who the miners and nodes and where the users go. It's really what it comes down to is who's more committed. Which side is really more committed than the other side?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It'll probably play out longer, but I still do believe that there will be a dominant coin from the split. It will gravitate to, it'll split. And right now, if you look at the futures market, it's 15.75, 15.85, 25.75. It's kind of around there. It's been fluctuating. And, until it actually happens, we don't know what people will really do. And so that's kind of like the futures market right now. So one side is already a little bit more dominant than the other if you just look at the futures market. But after that happens, it'll be interesting to see what side really becomes more dominant than the other, because something like this really hasn't happened. I know there's Bitcoin Cash, but they've essentially become an altcoin for the most part. They don't I don't know if they compete, because anytime that anybody just creates a coin, it competes with Bitcoin and all the other coins. So just doing a fork of Bitcoin
Well, Bitcoin is
doesn't
trying to
quite
compete.
necessarily mean that they're.
I mean, I've seen their merchant adoption gone up significantly in the last month or so. So they're attempting to compete. They're really emphasizing their utility. And they are having a pretty strong case when people are seeing that you have to spend, you know, 10, 100, or misspend $400 in fees. And that matters for some people. It doesn't matter for everyone. And so I think Bitcoin Cash is really making the use case of being your daily spender, what you spend on the daily. So
Yeah,
if you
let's
have it,
talk about fees a little
yeah.
bit, because we've had a mempool. I think Thursday to Friday, spiked
Mm-hmm.
up to 30,000 transactions in the mempool, and I was playing around during that time with
Uh-huh.
low fees. I don't know, have you checked your wallet? I've been sending you like micro amounts
Oh, I tried to
of
send you a
Bitcoin.
micropayment, and I have no idea if it went through to your little treasure hunt
Okay.
with a note
Oh, okay.
to see.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I haven't
All
checked.
right.
Yeah.
I should check it out. I sent a micropayment there too,
Uh
and
huh.
so I sent it in a batch. I've been playing around with the coin bin.
Mhm.
It's also a sender as well as a wallet generator, as well as a online wallet. And I've been playing around with the fees. I've been able
Mhm.
to get it down to like 1 Satoshi per byte. So if I did a one simple transaction with basically one input, two outputs, it's about 200, around 255, around there, 260, 240, 235, 25, 225 bytes. And I've been able to get it to 1 cent, which is around 1 to 2 Satoshis.
Yeah.
It takes a little while to confirm, but before the spike to 30,000 transactions in the mempool, it confirmed relatively within the day.
Yeah.
But as soon as the mempool went up, it took almost like 2 days, and also I was able to double spend. And what I noticed was that when I made a transaction, I broadcasted the transaction.
Mhm.
It some nodes or some miners try to pick up on it,
Mhm.
and so when I looked up the transaction, when I actually looked up the transaction ID, different exchanges or different explorers did not show it, while others showed it. And so I was literally able to double spend during that time, because there was so much volume in mempool that it wasn't able to keep up with my transactions. It didn't even, I mean, it knew that it was a double spend because it said double spend,
Mhm.
but because nothing's been confirmed and it was all unconfirmed, literally I could just take that double spend and keep respending it to like 50 different places until it dropped. And so
Mhm.
I'm assuming there was a lot of orphan blocks during that time, because I know a lot of my double spend did drop, and the ones that you know were unconfirmed and not double spent
See,
eventually did go through.
I don't understand why there's been an increase of orphan blocks, and why these mining pools are not picking up. Do they not have enough servers or miners and to pick everything up to keep up?
Well, it's as far as I know, I think it's just designed that way.
It's
You
designed
make
that.
you make blocks, or the average time is every 10 minutes that
Mhm.
someone's able to create a block. And
Mhm.
so you see an average of maybe 2 to 3 transactions per second. And so when it gets bombarded with transactions, they always pick the highest fee first,
Yeah.
because that's the incentive, is to add into the block the highest fee. So the miners who creates the block, they get all those fees that you tacked on to get it into the block, and then the nodes basically verify it, and they propagate it out, and that's where you get the confirmation. So it's designed that way. Would it help if, you know, it's kind of weird because they're able to go beyond a 1 megabyte block, but what I've seen is they've done nothing but stay underneath the 1 megabyte, even though they can go above it. So
Yeah.
they rarely go above, like up to the 2 megabyte that you could possibly do right now, but they always stay underneath it. So it leads me to believe that the hard fork that's coming up has nothing to do with, you know, the block size. I really think they want to replace the development team so they can basically take control of Bitcoin and use it to their advantage. And, you know, it's possible that they can, you know, keep the block size, increase the block size for the purposes of, for example, the miners could have certain miners in certain geographical locations can have an advantage by the increased block size. Other businesses can take advantage possibly of the lower fees, if there is going to be lower fees, because their business model was built upon Bitcoin having lower fees. And, you know, there's a lot of manipulation that can happen with the code by replacing the development team, possibly. And so that's the danger, I think, in this hard fork. But the fees recently, they spike up when the price spikes. I'm not sure if this is natural or if this is a spam. But what I did notice is that every time there is an increase in transaction, the fees that I input or the fees that I put on my transaction has to increase. Now, I don't know if it's because of the code that it adjusts to that, so it prevents spamming, because I couldn't do like 1 Satoshi per byte. I had to bump it to 2 Satoshis just to get a transaction. And then when I couldn't get it to do any transactions on 2 Satoshis, I had to bump it to 3 Satoshis per byte. And then I would get a transaction ID.
See, but what is spam?
Right now, if just people. Okay.
If I'm willing to pay the fee, what is spam really? And if we're trying to get to where Bitcoin, where 1 Satoshi is like $1, you know, what is spam? Really, honestly. I mean, I know the network has been spam, but some people consider $5 spam. You know, $5 value of Bitcoin at whatever period of time. And so, I don't know. I think you should be able to send whatever amount of Bitcoin, whether it's 1 Satoshi or whatever, as long as you're capable of paying the fee that's associated with it. And I'm very concerned by the nature of some of the developments of some of these wallets where that's not even possible. Or the fact I can't manipulate or change the fee structure to fit my transaction. Because sometimes some defaults are too high.
Yeah. There's some of the wallets are very high, and I guess we could talk about the wallets. And you know, I think they're designed that way because when there was a lot of transactions, people were complaining that their transactions were stuck, and they can't do anything about it. And so that's why they implemented these higher fees. So if you wanted your transaction to be in there as quick as possible, the only way to do it at that time was to increase the fees. And that's when the whole debate started going about increasing the block size so it can alleviate that. But essentially, right now I've been playing with like trying to get as low a fee as possible. But it seems like whenever there's an increase in transaction, that there's some kind of auto adjustment where you have to increase your fees, even from 1 Satoshi to 3 Satoshi per byte, or to 5 Satoshi per bytes, which it just equates to 1 cent to maybe 5 cents for the transaction. That's all it equates to. But you know, I'm experimenting and playing with it, and I'm finding that the wallets and the wallet sender that I'm using does adjust to the mempool. So if there's more transactions in the mempool, it will, make you choose a higher fee. It will not
Yeah.
do like the lowest possible fee, and if it
Well,
does,
well, I think what it is people aren't capable of going to maybe the lower priority fee because, or the lowest fee, is because they don't have the option to adjust it. Like in my Salient wallet, they have like low priority, economic, normal, and priority, and you can adjust the fee based on that schedule, and it even tells you the hours it would take for your transaction to go through, to send, and the costs, and what the site invite. It's like pretty detailed, and it's which I appreciate. But I think if more people had the opportunity or chance to lower their fees, then the price overall of fee transactions is going to be lower, because if you have a bunch of fees that are like, the majority of them are going to be like, I don't know, 32 cents, that's the average cost, then the miners are going to have to pick that up no matter what, and then the fee structure is going to be 32 cents. It's going to be lower. I mean, I just don't think users have as much say in the fees as they once had, and I think it's because of these wallet designs, and maybe because we're not doing enough education about, to new users, how you can change the fee structure and the time it takes and things of that nature. I don't know. Also, I don't understand why miners just don't scoop up whatever the transactions are, whatever. As long as you're collecting fees, does it really truly matter getting that high amount every single time? I would
yeah,
think.
it actually does. They've been able to scoop up an extra, extra 1 or 2 Bitcoins on
Mm-hmm.
fees. And so
Yeah.
that's an extra $10,000 or $15,000 at
Uh,
current market prices. And so that's quite a bit. So,
yeah,
when
but if
people
they're
pay
targeting
higher
it
fees, that's
often as they're doing so, and they're letting things sit for a while and things keep dropping off, they're having these fluctuations of transaction times. I mean, wouldn't a consistent flow of transactions happening be better in the long term than these short term gains?
yeah. But miners have a different incentive. Miners definitely have different
Or
incentive.
it's just the miners that are currently mining have a different incentive and are not thinking in the long term gain? Because I would think,
You
as a
know,
miner, I would want as consistent amount of transactions going and occurring on the network as often, so I'm consistently getting fees, a set amount of fees, as well as a mining reward at the same time. I would think I would like trying to reach some kind of middle stability, instead of just this high target, shooting, because it's causing the fluctuation of how many transactions go within Bitcoin, what people send and how much they send. And it's not as much traffic as maybe previously, but there's all these fluctuations of volume. I mean, it's not consistent. I think personally, it doesn't seem to be very consistent.
yeah, I've had a chance to people who mine, I
Mm-hmm.
guess, whether they actually mine with, Bitcoin miners or altcoin, and then
Mm-hmm.
eventually dump their altcoins for Bitcoin. But
Mm-hmm.
they're constantly under selling pressure. In my opinion, I don't mine, but you pay for a machine
Mm-hmm.
that you have to have delivered to you. So there's a few months where you're losing money just by not mining,
Mm-hmm.
and the difficulty is rising, and the price is increasing, which causes more difficulty to rise. So
Mm-hmm.
you're already losing money the day you order it. So once you get it, it costs you money,
Mm-hmm.
and so you have to start mining right away, and then you have cost. And I talk to some people, and they say, yeah, I make money mining. If that was true, then everybody would be mining, but not everyone's mining. and
Mm-hmm.
and I know it's not true because I've seen people try to mine and never, like, really mine, and never get their money back. Or if they do get their money back, it's only for a while. But after that, they don't get any more money back. And so, if mining was really the way to go, then everybody would be mining. It wouldn't be a question of why would people not mine. It'd be like, why wouldn't you mine? But because mining is a capital investment, you constantly have to have capital. And in order to have capital, you have to always sell your coins. So that a lot of miners don't, in my opinion, I mean, maybe the small miners, the larger miners, maybe they could sustain that because they got the money. But your average miner who may be joining a mining pool, he can't sustain, you know, feeding this mining hobby of his for 2 to 3 years. You know, he has to take his coins and dump them and get money to pay the cost of electricity, the machine, and then by then, the time they recover their costs on all this, the difficulty's gone up, and they're getting like half the coin or less, the amount, and they receive a very little reward after that, and that's their profit. And then they take that profit, and unfortunately, they end up buying more machines, and maybe they make a little bit of profit after buying the new machines. They make a little bit of profit, and so that's my understanding of mining, and that's what miners tell me. That's what I've done and through my research. Now, other people, I don't know whether to believe them or not, but they tell me yes, they make all this money mining, but you know, at the same time, I don't see them really living that rich. You know, if anything, you know, if they do mine, it's probably because they pre-mined it or they're creating an altcoin, which they have the first step advantage, first mover advantage, and that's where you make the money, is being the first mover when it comes to mining. You'll get the most amount of coins, the difficulty is the easiest, and then after that it becomes harder and harder, and you're relying on the market. If it costs you very little money, like with Bitcoin in the beginning, where you can mine with your CPU, and you've got 2 million coins or a million coin like Satoshi Nakamoto, it didn't cost him very much. He just like literally had a laptop mining Bitcoin. Well, all he had to do was literally wait like 9 years, and he's a billionaire. I probably could have done that if I could read the future, if I knew what was going to happen. I would have done that too. But so people are trying to do that because they think that this could happen to them, what happened to Bitcoin. So being the first person to mine, that's probably your best time. After that, it's a capital intensive cost that it's constant, and you constantly, just to keep up, you always have to upgrade your machine. You got electricity, then you have to dump your coins, or you take your coins that you do have and buy more machines, and so you're left with some coins, and then you start the process over again. Then you made some coins again, and then you took some of that coins and you bought more machines, and you have some left over. But that's the life of a miner. Me, all I have to do is just buy the coins, and usually it's from a miner that needs to dump them, right? That's all I have to do. I don't have to worry about electricity or anything, or I don't have that cost. I don't have to rebuy hundreds of $1,000s of equipment. I don't have, you know, internet bandwidth costs. I don't have electricity costs. I don't have to have cooling. I'm not, you know, I don't have to have a warehouse because it gets so hot. All that adds up. Plus, you probably have to, if you're smart, you probably have insurance as well, because there's been some mining farms that have burned down.
Yes, I've seen those pictures.
And there goes all your money.
Yeah.
It's not a pleasant.
Does exist. No, I understand the plight of the miners. I'm not sure if this fee market is going to sustain for a very long time, because you can't have a new economic.
It has to, because as the rewards go down, I'm sure the compensation will be the price goes up to compensate for the block rewards. I mean, it has to keep people mining. There's no way that people will mine if the price goes down and you're getting less block rewards. That's like a double whammy. You would get like half. Literally, the only miners that would be left are the large mining farms, because they have the cash flow and the bankroll to do that, and it'd probably work out well for them, because that would get rid of all the other miners. reducing the difficulty and leaving them to mine all the
But if
blocks.
but if it
And
costs
so
for the user just to move like $1, and it costs them $10 in fees, then this new economic system, we've pigeonholed ourselves to be a storage value and not the full power of everything that you can do with Bitcoin as a currency, as a storage value, as, you know, maybe potentially a smart contract and all these other things.
I'm
I
glad you
don't know
brought
what
that
this.
up, because I think that's a possible flaw in the whole Bitcoin system, and not
Mm-hmm.
only in Bitcoin. If the fees are to be like this, if
Mm-hmm.
we're going to eventually go to a fee-based market, which I think we're headed this way, because
Well,
as the
we
mining
already are.
rewards drop, yeah,
We are a fee
well,
market
as mining
system.
rewards
People just don't
drop,
acknowledge
and
it.
the price goes up, and you know, the only way the miners are going to stick around is if by collecting fees. Then you know, that's at some point it's not, uh, you know, I don't know if Bitcoin will last, and I'm not even sure if Bitcoin will last for centuries. I think this could be just uh, under 100 years, maybe 50 years, and but the reason I say that is because I think as time goes forward, a lot of things are going to happen much faster than things that have happened in the last 100 years. So if you look at advances in technology, they happen at a faster pace. So if anything, I think in the future, if energy cost is
Mm-hmm.
an issue, because we are in an energy crisis. You know, there's only,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so much fossil fuels you can burn. You know, all
Well,
the energy that was ever created comes from not so many sources, either the sun, the moon, or the earth itself. So either there's going to be a tremendous advance in technology to the point where we can have cheap energy,
mm-hmm.
and maybe Bitcoin will advance that, because the high price of Bitcoin will be invested into ideas that create unlimited energy to the point where, well, you know, and I'm going to go to my Star Trek thing. I always go there. I always go there, to the point where we no longer need any money. You know, we have a very cheap source of energy, so we don't have to fight each other anymore for oil or resources, right? If
Mm-hmm.
everyone can get energy that has low pollution, right, we don't have to fight each other. We can all just live. And then on top of that, you know, we actually may leave this planet, you know, and explore other planets. And, you know, the problem, I think, of being locked onto this planet, you know, inside of every person, I think there's a sense of exploration. And whether Bitcoin will do that or not, I'm not sure. I'm just going way out there. But I do believe the advances in technology will increase rapidly. The value of Bitcoin will go up rapidly during that time as well. Maybe even fund some of the companies who create the technology, which will eventually better our lives to the point where we no longer need Bitcoin to be rich. We can just maybe create a utopia. Now, I'm going out there, but that's my fantasy dreamland.
Mm-hmm. Well, I do think some of the energy issues are being addressed. I mean, solar energy is getting better. These Tesla type batteries that people are developing, there are efforts, and becoming more efficient with what resources machines are using, but we're still far off from having like an infinite power source, which is what we truly need to sustain human growth. Is a power source that we can turn on, and it funds entire cities. You know, it entire states, really a country, and we don't have to think much about it because it's done. But we're far from that, and I'm not even sure if we
Well, you know,
have.
I'm thinking within 100 years. I mean, I'll be dead, most likely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I'll still be alive, because not only advances in energy production, but advances in healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people talk about gene therapy and all that. I think right now they're just full of it, and they're looking for money.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually, I think that will get there, where whether it's prosthetics or artificial intelligence, or taking my memories and putting it into an artificial cyborg, whatever it may be. I think advances will come so fast that it will be possible to live a very longer life, whether it's genetics, biogenetics, mechanics, robotics, artificial intelligence. I mean, there's Brian was sharing with me a link that the UN was talking about artificial intelligence, and they were really talking about how it's going to take over society and be a part of our everyday lives. I mean, they were serious.
Well, there's
But
already
again, some of these people, some of
Well,
these
there's
people are
already
also serious about global warming as well too. But go ahead.
Yeah. Well, there's already soft artificial intelligence with this machine learning and algorithms that have been utilized for various businesses and governments currently as we speak. Um, so we already have some of that kind of controlling us. Just look at the type of ads you see on your computer, just simply from having a conversation with a person in your life, either through email or even by voice, because Google's listening on because you have a Google phone or an Apple phone or something to that extent. Um, I do think AIs could, if not programmed properly, be take over everything, and we wouldn't even know it. And that's even scarier, I think, because we won't even see the changes that are being made because they're constantly made. These micro changes are being bombarded with like 100 or 1,000 times a day, and we don't know the difference. We can't tell the difference between unreality and reality and what's being constructed in front of us.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right about that, because there's a saying that if you took a frog and you put it in boiling water, it would jump out immediately. But
Mm-hmm.
if you put a frog into like room temperature water and slowly turned up the heat, it would just sit there until it died.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe we're going through that. We just don't know we're going to be a part of this whole uh, information revolution. I don't know what they're calling it. They're calling it the next industrial revolution. I don't know what it would be, the digital revolution, the artificial revolution, or but I do believe we are entering into a new revolution, and cryptocurrencies is probably a part of it. Other advances that's going to be made, again, biotechnology, gene therapy, AI, energy production. So, but I'm just talking way in the future possibilities. But anyways, we've gone through a lot. Is there anything else you wanna bring up before we conclude this episode?
I think we touched on everything we pre-discussed. Yeah, I think we're good. Yeah.
Boy, we really talked for a while there. But I like talking with you, Hiroja, because it's fun, and we bounce a lot of ideas off each other, and I just don't see that in this space. All I see in this space, especially on YouTube, is
Mm-hmm.
buy this coin because you're going to get rich, or
Mm-hmm.
sign up under me because I'll get rich,
Mm-hmm.
or buy this coin so I can dump it on you. That's all I hear. I don't, and sometimes I get into the technology as well as I learn about Bitcoin and everything. But I'm really interested in understanding how this technology, which is Bitcoin or whatever altcoin, how this possibly in some remote future of my life or anybody else's life could what can it result into. Now, for me, it's like, okay, right now it's just money. I trade it. I kind of live off of it, and I've immensely benefited from this year anyway. It's gone up in value. But at the end of the day, I mean, what does it all mean? Other than me buying a Lambo, I mean, there has to be some result of this happening, because it's really taken hold, and it has become global now. Like when I got into it, it was kind of global. There's Cyprus crisis, but now it's like Russia's like serious about making their own coin. China's banning ICOs and maybe making their own coin. I
And
mean,
there's I have
countries
to
are
look
getting
into
really
it deep.
involved.
Yeah, I have to look into it deeper, but there was an announcement that Venezuela is looking to give tax breaks for people that utilize Bitcoin, like 5 to 6%. So there's a lot going on in this space where people are just they're grabbing onto Bitcoin and making it a global thing. And it'll be interesting to see, like, with 5 years time, we'll see a shift where people are accepting at all levels Bitcoin versus the US dollar.
That'll be interesting. Yeah, that'll be another topic of discussion that we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
We can probably go hours on about that, but
Yeah.
anyways, we'll conclude this show. It was a great show. It was great talking to you, Hiroja. Hopefully, do you want to talk about? You want to let the audience know about Monday?
Oh, yes. Monday, you can find me and James Bond and possibly Brian talking about something other than like capturing the industry or capturing, regulations through exchanges, but what could possibly within a realm of probability could, the cryptocurrency space experience that would radically change it, either for the good or the bad. My example that I gave to James as an example for this topic was like, what would happen if Satoshi Nakamoto were just to move one Satoshi from one of the designated wallets that people know he has? How would the community react? Would they freak? Would they celebrate? Would the government come down hard and start looking for Satoshi Nakamoto? I mean, what would that mean for the overall cryptocurrency space? Would it cause a sell-off? Would people buy in? I mean, there's all sorts of kind of scenarios. I mean, what would that do for the space? That
Yeah,
man
that's going to be a hot topic.
yeah, that man has a tremendous amount of wealth in crypto. So I was just thinking of that, and there could be something
I was
else.
hoping you would give it to me.
Yeah. That would be nice, even just one coin would be nice, being given to you by some people,
Right.
and I would never
Those
sell
coins,
it.
if you think about it.
Yeah, I would never sell it.
You would what?
I would basically say, tell my grandkids, this is the coin that Satoshi Nakamoto gave me right here. You see it in
Yeah,
the
they'd be worth more. They'd be worth like 1,000,000 times more than
yeah,
the regular Bitcoin, because it actually came from
came
the
from
mine
him.
coin of Satoshi Nakamoto. It's like it's like a collector's item on top of a collector's item.
A collector's item, a collector's item. See, there's even a message from him. He said my name. He knew who I was. Look.
Okay, yeah. So tune in on Monday on your channel, right? Is it the Thought Bubble, or is it on your regular
It's going to
channel?
be on the Space Odyssey network. Keep it simple for people. And
okay, so it's going to be tomorrow. Do you know what time? Is it Pacific time? What time do you have?
It will be 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Just keeping it the same time frame, and go from there with that particular topic. I think we can probably delve into all sorts of, not too conspiratorial, but all sorts of different thought experience, if you will, about what the cryptocurrency space would look like.
Excellent, man. Man, you're gonna make me think all night. I'm gonna stay up all night thinking about this. My goodness. Anyways, this concludes this episode. Thank you, everybody in the chat, for participating in the chat box. Feel free to like, subscribe, leave a comment after the show. Until next time, everyone. Bye bye.